Base daf is daf lamed vav. We're going to start here on daf lamed hayam and base with gufa. It's about 10 lines up from the bottom. Omar Rabba bar Nosan, Tano chita v'hodelo v'sorim potter. When a person is toein chitin, he has an implicit mechila on any other claim, and therefore the nitva doesn't pay anything. My kamashman tanina. Gemara Esakasha, we have this in a Mishnah in Shavuos Daf Mem, or at least in a Brisa in Shavuos. Tano chita v'hodelo v'sorim potter. So Gemara says, if we only had the Brisa, Hava Mina, I would have thought, potter mitmei chitin v'chai v'tmei seorim. Kamashman de potter legami. I would have thought that since the nitba concedes that he owes Sa'orin, Hodas Paltin Kmei Edim Domi, Kamash Malon, no, he's potter because of the Mechila of the Toveh. Tanan. We learned in the Mishnah, Hayu HaNizakin Shnayim, and the Gemara wants to ask a kasha on Rabba Bar Nosan from our Mishnah. Echad Gadol v'Echad Katan. So there are two mazikim, one is a Gadol, one is a Katan, and there are two nizakim. One is a gadol, one is a katan. And the nizak is claiming that the gadol was mazik the gadol, the katan was mazik the katan, and the mazik says just the opposite. It was the katan that was mazik the gadol, and the gadol was mazik the katan. And we apply the principle of motzi mechaver levarai. So the Gemara's medayik. It means haraya means that if the Tovea, in this case, the Nizak, wants to substantiate his claim, he has to adduce evidence. But as far as that part of the claim which is acceptable to both the Tovea and the Nitba, Holomaisi Raya, if he cannot bring a Raya, Kidika Omar Mazik, then at least the Hodah of the Mazik, which means that the katan is chayav to pay for the gadol, that certainly has to pay. Why don't we apply the principle of Rabba Bar Nosan? And we're going to say hello to Steve. We haven't seen him in a long time. Okay. So the Gemara says that we have to reinterpret the Mishnah. The Mishnah doesn't mean that he'll actually collect that amount of money because there was a Hodas Bal Din, but rather Roy Litol. If he would bring a Raya, then it would be Roy Litol. He would collect from the Gadol for the Gadol and the Cotton for the Cotton. But Vienlo, if he doesn't have a Raya, he can't produce evidence, then the halacha would be that he doesn't collect anything because of Rabbi Bar Nosan's principle that he was moda, that he doesn't get anything. So the Gemara says, I have a difficulty with that. Vatanya, we have a brisa that says, Hareza mishtalim ala koton mina gadol. In other words, let's get the minimum amount collected by the nizak, which the mazik admits to, vila gadol mina koton. So you see that there is a tashlum, there is a payment, a compensation. In actuality, it's not just roy, a theoretical compensation. And the Gemara answers the tofas. It's a case in which the nizak was tofes, that amount of money that was coming to him by virtue of the admission of the mazik. In other words, that money which would be the katan from the gadol and the gadol from the katan, that much money, if he grabs, then we can't take it out of his possession. And the Gemara is going to ask from our Mishnah. Tanan, hoya echad tam vi echad muad. Anizik omer muad hizik es hagadol tam es hakaton. Correct, because the vested interest of the nizak is obviously to collect more money, which he can do if he says that it was the muad that was mazik, because then he gets nezik sholim. How mazik from his perspective as a nitba, omer loki elotam it was the tam that was mazik es hagadol, and muad es hakoton. Amotzu mechaver v'raya. Holo maisi raya. Again, the same diuk. Shokel kida omer mazik. At least let him collect the amount of money that they both agree that he's chayav, and the mazik concedes that he's chayav that amount of money, the minimum amount of money. V'amai chitinu sorininu. Again, this contradicts the principle of Rabbi Nosson, of Rabbi Bar Nosson. And now we start today's daf. That's daf Lamed Vav. And once again, the Gemara now is going to give the same answer, Roy Lito. In other words, if he would bring a raya, the nizak would be able to claim from the mazik the maximum amount of money, as he claims, but v'yelo. But if he doesn't have a raya, then he doesn't collect anything, because of the implicit hodas baldin that from that shore he can't claim, because he's claiming from the other shore. So the Gemara asks, "Vatanya hareza mishtalim l'katan min hamuad v'lashor gadol min hatam." We have a brisa that says explicitly that he will collect the minimum amount of money, but why? It's hodelo b'saorim. And the Gemara answers the tofas once again, because the nizak was tofis from the mazik, the equivalent amount of money of the hodah of the mazik. Now we go back to the Mishnah. Hayu shneim shalish echad shneim chayovim. In a situation where there were two shvarim that were mazik, we don't know which one was the actual mazik, and there are two, let's say, candidates, but we don't know which one actually did the hezek, but the both shvarim are owned by the same person. So therefore the nizak has the wherewithal to claim from the mazik that you owe me this amount of money, that I suffered a loss, and mimonavshach, whichever shor it was that actually implemented the hezek, you're chayav, because you own both shvarim. Amalei rava mi parzika l'Rav Ashi, shma mina. What we could derive from this Mishnah is that the nizak could claim his amount of money, of his compensation, from either one of the two shvarim. Shvarim tamim shiziku, rotza mizegova, rotza mizegova. The nizak has the rights to collect from either one of the two shvarim, and that becomes very important in the case of a shar tam, because the shar tam only collects migufo. So the maximum amount of money when he collects from the mazik chatzi nezek is equal to the value of the shar mazik as it would be sold in the market, and therefore he's going to choose amongst these two shvarim which one of the oxen is worth more in the market. So the Gemara now is supporting our Mishnah with this statement of Rava to Rav Ashi. So the Gemara now wants to reject this. And the Gemara is going to quote the response of Rav Ashi to Rava, meaning that when Rava presented his thesis, and we thought that that's really based on and reflects our Mishnah, Rav Ashi says no. The Mishnah is talking about a different case. B'mu'adin, your presentation, Rava, presumes that the Mishnah was talking about two shvarim tamid. And you went as far as to say that the nizak could now have the claim from the more expensive of the two shvarim, and as we said, he collects migufo, and thus he gains, he has sort of the joker card in his pocket to collect the higher sum of money, even though we have no proof at all that it was the more expensive shar that actually implemented the hezek. And therefore, Rav Ashi says, no, the Mishnah is talking about mu'adim. Now, in the case of mu'adim, you're not limited meaning the nizak is not limited to collect migufo according to the market value of the shar mazik, but rather he pays min aliyah, meaning basically the owner of the shar mazik will go into his bank account and he'll pay chatzi nezek of the loss that was suffered by the nizak. And therefore, it really makes no difference which shar he goes to. But if it would have been, says Rav Ashi, 2 shvarim tamim, then the nizak can't collect from whichever shar that he wants to and go to the more expensive shar, because he doesn't have any proof to substantiate his claim. So Rava says, if you're telling me that our Mishnah is talking about mu'adim, ema seifa, let's see if we can use those standards and that interpretation and fit it into the seifa. In the seifa of the Mishnah, haya echad gadol v'echad katan, hanizak omer hagadol hizik v'mazik omer loki ela katan hizik. So now in the seifa, it would seem, and the Gemara postulates, without even questioning this assumption, that we're talking about 2 shvarim tamim. And the altercation here, or the debate here between the mazik and the nizak, is that since there's a chiyuv of chatzi nezek migufo, the question is, what's migufo? Is it migufo of the more expensive shar, which is the gadol, or of the less expensive shar of the katan? Is hamotzi mechaver of a raya? And therefore the Gemara says, Ibn Muadim, because if you're going to tell me, as you, Rava, were insisting, that the Mishnah in the Reisha was talking about a case of Tamim, and then now we get to the Seifa, and from the Seifa, we get the impression that we're talking about Muadim, is Mainafka Lemina, self to make Turma Aliyah Boilish Lumen. Why would there be any sort of debate between the Mazik and the Nizak as to whether it was the Gadol or it was Mazik the Gadol or the Katan, or not the other way around? Mainafka Mina, you pay Min Aliyah. He pays from his bank account. Amalei, so Rav Ashi responds to Rava, Seifa betamin, Veresha b'muadim. We could actually split the Mishnah into 2 parts. And the fact that the Reisha is talking about Tamim and the Seifa is talking about Muadim is not, or the other way around, it doesn't matter. Amalei Rav Achas Sabal Rav Ashi, Muadim. If we're talking about 2 shvarim mu'adim, then the lashon of shneim chayavim is not an appropriate language, because we don't have a case of mu'adim where you pay me gufam. Mu'adim always pay min aliyah. Is chayav gafra bi boile? It shouldn't have said that the chiyuv depends upon the shar, but rather on the person in the bailam that owns the shar. Visu, and furthermore, my shneim. If we're talking about mu'adim that were mazik, the chiyuv tashlum is not limited to the gufo shel shar. All of his money is leaned, L-I-E-N, for the payment of that compensation. So you can't tell me that our Mishnah is talking about mu'adim, because then it makes no sense. Olam b'tamin, we're talking about cases of tamin that were mazik, and the reason why it says shneim chayovin is not because of the din of Rava, of Parzika, of Ratzmi Zegova, Ratzmi Zevgova, but the Mishnah is teaching me that as long as both are there right in front of us, he could be gova from them. But if one of them gets lost, then he can't be gova at all, because we don't know which shar was mazik. Maybe the one that got lost, and he only has rights to collect migufo, is the one that was mazik. And therefore we go according to Rabbi Akiva, who says yuchlat ashar. And as we've discussed in the past, Rabbi Akiva, back on Daf Lamed Gimel, was of the opinion that the owner of a shor tam that was mazik becomes now a half owner, which means that the nizak now owns half the shor of the mazik, right? That's called yuchlad ashor and shutfim ninu. So now both the mazik and the nizak become shutfim in the shor mazik. Each one will collect half of the dmei hanezek from the shor. Only if both shvarim are here, then the nizak could collect the dmei hezek, and he could collect it from both of them, because we know that one of them was certainly mazik. But if one of them is lost, and we're left with only one shar, motzi amale, the mazik could say to the nizak, Zil Aisirai, the high Torah Azkoch Vashalim Lecha. The burden of proof is on your shoulders to prove that the shor that was left and is right here in front of us, as opposed to the shor that flew the coop and is lost, this is the shor that was mazik. And if you can't prove that, then you can't collect. Chadron Alecha Aminin. And now we start the fourth perek of Bava Kamma. We have one shor, it's a shor tam, and it was nogeach, it attacked 4 or 5 different shvarim, one after the other. Now, in this case, all four negichos are negichos of a tam. Now, a tam becomes a muad after the third negicha. So how could it be that it attacked 4 or 5 shvarim and it still remains a short tam? And the answer is because there was no ha'ada between one negicha and the other. The only time a short tam gets upgraded to the status of a muad is if after each negicha there was a warning when 2 Eidin testified, and they warned the owner of the shor, hamazik, that his shor is on the way to becoming a muad. But in a case where there was no ha'adah, there was no hasra to the Baal HaShor, then the shor retains its status as a shor muad. So what happens now? We have a situation where one shor is chayav for compensation to Mei Hezek to many, many different shvarim that were all attacked and victimized by this one shor. Now, the problem is that in the case of shor tam, who collects, the nizak collects chatz, he doesn't mean gufo shel shor. So there's only one shor, and there are many nizakim, many different victims who are vying for collection from that one single shor. Therefore, the Mishnah establishes Yishalim la'achron shebahem, that first he collects from the very last nizak. So if let's say there were 5 nizakim, then it's the last nizak on the list, chronologically the last one, who has rights to collect from this shor hamazik, which is a shor tam, migufo shel shor. And lechora, at face value, the Mishnah makes no sense, because it should be the Rishon, the first victim, who should have first rights to collect, and if there's any money left over, then the second, third, and fourth, and fifth. And the Gemara is going to have to deal with this question. The Mishnah continues, Vim yeshbo mosar, if let's say after the Achron collects, the last one to be victimized, collects from the shor hamazik, the tam, there's still money left over in the bag because the shor tam was worth that much more money. Then yachzir l'lefanov, v'im yesh bo mosa yachzir l'fnei lefanov, ha'achron achron miskar divrei Rabbi Meir. So what happens is that if there was A, B, C, D, and E, and after E collected from the shor hamazik, the shor tam, there was still left money in the bag, then D collects. And if there's money left over after D, it goes back. So the last one is the one who wins the case, so to speak. He's the one who collects the most money. So that if, let's say, the shar tam hamazik was worth 200, then the achron is going to collect chatzi nezek, which is 100. There's still 100 left in the value of the shar hamazik, and then the next to the achron, which we called him D, he'll collect 50 zuzim, half of the 100 zuzim that's left. But the niskar, the one who collects the most money, is the achron, and that's the shita Rabbi Meir. And once again, as we said before, at the face of it, Rabbi Meir makes no sense. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon disagrees. Now again, even Rabbi Shimon is going to accept a very fundamental principle that it's the last nizak of the 5 who will collect a full chatzi nezek. But he disagrees with Rabbi Meir in a case where they divvy up what's left after the last nizak collects his chatzi nezek from the Baal HaShor. Shor shavim masayim shenogach l'shor shavim masayim ve'enan avel yofa klum. So the mazik is worth 200 zuz, and the nizak is worth 200 zuz. The nevela, the carcass, is worth nothing. So what's the din? Zeno tel mana, v'zeno tel mana, so that we split the value of the shor hamud. The shor hamud is worth on the market 200. We're going to split it, and the nizak collects 100, which is half of the nezek, and the mazik retains ownership on half of the shor mazik. But chazar v'nogach shor acher shavim masayim. If now the shor goes out and it damages another shor, which is also worth masayim, and the nevel is not worth anything, is ha'achar notel mana v'shelafanov. So once again, as we said earlier, Rav Shimon agrees to the fundamental principle of Rabbi Meir that the achron is niskar. He gets first dibs to collect from the shor mazik, and he collects 100. And now, the lefanov, right, the one that was before him, is zeno tel chamishim v'zeno tel chamishim. We're left with 100 in the pot, so to speak, from the value of the shor mazik that's being sold, and we'll divvy it up into 2. And the next to the last nizak will collect 50, and the mazik is left with 50. And I'm going to read to you a few words here in the Masifta. He adds a few very important words. He says, the nizak harishon becomes a shutaf in the shor mazik, which means that Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah seems to be reflecting the Shita Rabbi Akiva of Yuchlad Ashar. So Yuchlad Ashar means that the nizak automatically becomes the bailim of whatever the value that corresponds to his claim, which is chatzi nezek, so that he becomes now a partner in the shor mazik automatically. Now, what are the implications of his owning half the shor mazik? He becomes what's called a shomer. In other words, he's now responsible if that shor mazik goes out and damages and victimizes another shor. And we're going to see soon that the status of this shomer is that of a shomer sachar. He's benefiting by the fact that he owns the animal, and therefore he's chayav. So if the shor goes out and now damages more, then since he owns half of the shor, I'm talking about the first nizak, he will have to pay half of the damim that would be coming to the second nizak, which would be a quarter of the original value. So it's a half of a half, meaning the first nizak becomes a half owner of the shor mazik. When that shor goes out and damages the second nizak has recourse to claim half the mazik, and half of that is going to be split between the original Baal HaMazik and the first nizak, because they are now equal partners in the shor mazik. V'nogach shar acher shav masam na'achar notel mana shalafanav chamishim u'shnayim rishonim dinar zav. Now, dinar zav is the equivalent of 25 zuz. So since the second nizak collects 50, the third nizak will collect 25, which is half of the nezek to the second nizak. Now the Gemara wants to analyze, based on the sugya of Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva about Yuchlat Ashar, Yusham Ashar, back on Daf Lamed Gimel. According to Rabbi Akiva, immediately after the nezek, the nizak becomes part owner of the shar of mazik. That's called Yuchlat Ashar. And that's going to be the basis of the conclusion that the nizak now becomes a shomer responsible to watch and guard the shar of mazik, because he's now a partner, a shutaf, in the shar mazik, whereas according to Rabbi Shmuel, that's not so, because Rabbi Shmuel holds the Yusham Ashar, that the nizak does not become a part owner in the shar mazik. And when we say, according to Rabbi Shmuel, how does he understand gufo, meaning that a shar tam only collects me gufo? It doesn't mean that he owns gufo, and he automatically is a part owner over the shar mazik, but rather he can claim up to the value of the shar hamazik as it's sold on the market. And that would be divided into half in the case of a shar tam. Masnis and mani. We're going back to Rabbi Meir and our Mishnah. We're trying to figure out if Rabbi Meir should be attached to the sheet of Rabbi Shmuel of Yusham Ashar or to that of Rabbi Akiva of Yuchlat Ashar. And the Gemara says that at first glance, it would seem that Rabbi Meir is a third sheet. He doesn't fit into either of these two sheetas. Delok Rabbi Shmuel, udelok Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara is going to analyze why we reject attributing Rabbi Meir to either Rabbi Shmuel or to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel di Amar Bali Chovos Ninhu. If we would analyze our Mishnah according to Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Shmuel holds that Nizikin, in the case of a shar tam, is simply a Bal Chov, meaning that the mazik owes a debt to the nizak. The nizak has no ownership rights over the shar mazik. Is then hai achron niskar? Why should it be that it's the last nizak of the five who has rights to collect from the mazik? That makes no sense at all. Rishon niskar mi poile. It should say just the opposite. Not the achron is the one who gains first rights, first dibs to collect from the shar mazik, from the owner of the shar mazik, but rather it's the rishon. And that's a general principle that always applies amongst Bali Chovos. If, let's say, two people borrow money from so-and-so, then the first one to borrow, his shibud, his lien for collection from the Baal Chov is first. And he gets first rights. If there's any money left, then the second Baal Chov can collect from him. So therefore, it should have said Rishon Niskar. And this is more or less what we said when we learned the Mishnah, that Rabbi Meir at first glance makes no sense. But Rabbi Akiva Domer Torah Shutfininu, according to Rabbi Akiva, who says that automatically, with that nezek, the nizak becomes part owner of the shar mazik, and that's based on the principle of Yuchlat Ashar, is then the nizak harishon, who automatically becomes a shutaf in the shar, he should be paying at least his proportion, his half ownership over the shar mazik to the second nizak. If this shar again attacks an animal, and therefore we begin to understand that the nizak ha'achron is going to be collecting the full chatzi nezek. Why? Because with each one of the attacks, the collection is going to be to the last victim. He has first rights to collect because each one of the victims now became a part owner of the Shar Mazik and is now responsible for the nezek to the next guy on the line. So it's the culmination of all these mazikim, or I should say all these nizokim. They are now responsible for the hezek to the last of the line. So what's the Gemara's kasha now? L'chora, Rabbi Meir fits in very beautifully with Rabbi Akiva. And the Gemara asks the following kasha. The language of the Mishnah is very difficult. Why? The Mishnah says, Yeshbo Mosar, which means if there's anything left in the value of the shar as we go through each nizak subsequently, who is collecting from the value of the shar mazik, the Mishnah says, and here we turn to Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis, Yachzir le Shalafanav. Then we go back to the one that came before, right? We go back up to the line, which is called Lefanav.